Hello, everyone. Welcome to the GLORIO Chat, the best anime podcast on the internet. I feel like this season just started and we're already 3/4 through it or something.
Maybe it's because there's stuff we actually want to watch this season.
Yeah, maybe it's going by so quick, but some of the shows I'm watching are at episode 8 now or something.
Yeah.
And I'm like, really? We're already. And some of these I don't want to end.
Summer.
I don't. You go ahead, Iro.
It's almost summer, right? Yeah.
Yeah, we're almost about to hit our 11th anniversary, another year here.
Oh boy.
But it's wild. Time is flying by, and some of these shows I don't want to end. I don't want Birdie Wing to end. What are we going to do when Birdie Wing ends?
I mean, we'll start a spin-off of Birdie Wing AUs every time.
I'm going to have to go back and watch Mad Lax or something.
There's got to be a bowling spinoff called Turkey Wing.
Jesus Christ.
That's pretty good, actually. By good, that's awful. Yes.
I was thinking more of a spin-off where the fate of nations is decided by golf. Call it G Birdie Wing or something like
So,
that.
okay, I've not read this manga, but I see it pop up occasionally in the new releases, but the title is it's an isekai where baseball, all things are decided through baseball, and the high school ace has been transported to another world, right?
Yeah.
And I look at that title and I go, yeah, okay. What if it was not isekai though? And then I move on with my life.
And then what if it was golf as well?
Yeah,
the one true sport.
And also a Gundam fanfic. Anyway, so Birdie Wing, huh?
Yeah, well, we'll get to talking about Birdie Wing and all of our other shows in a moment, but let's introduce everybody. I'm Jel. I am joined by Iro.
I'm still here. I'm not dead yet.
You're still here. Not dead yet. My brain just automatically says I'm joined by G here, but he's actually not with us at the moment.
No, indeed.
Like I said, I'm not dead yet.
I'll have to summon.
What's good, everyone?
I'll have to summon as much burning fire and passion as I can to try to make up for G's absence, and he may or may not join us later. We'll see. But and we are joined by Zig.
Indeed, since I was last on this podcast, a man put on a hat and sat in a chair, and everybody was very excited about it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
well that's old
IRL.
news at this point, right? Yes.
Yeah, the world of anime moves too fast for real world consequences to have any effect whatsoever.
I feel like here in the States we did not catch a lot of that news from the coronation.
Oh, it depends on who you
I guess it depends
interact with on a daily basis.
My understanding is that there is a specific subset of freaks who
yes.
would definitely talk your ear off about it.
I personally did not catch a lot of it, fortunately.
Good.
But, yes. I probably heard more about Eurovision than the coronation.
Hell yeah,
Anyway.
because it's more important. That's
The more important happenings on that end of the
Yes.
world.
Yeah, it's still related to the EU.
Yes. All right. Well, enough of all that stuff. We've got anime and other things to talk about, and since we have both of you here, I think it's appropriate we do a little more Toku time.
Superhero time. Yeah.
Yes.
Speaking of European royal politics,
Actually, kind of.
So.
Well, you guys pick which one you want to talk about first.
Let's kick off with King-ohger, Royal
Yes.
Sentai King-ohger, just to maintain the integrity of the segue, which isn't completely ruined by me pointing it out. So you remember how, in the past, we've talked about how modern tokusatsu, or at least the Toei produced stuff, that is Kamen Rider and Super Sentai, has sort of settled into a weird niche where it produces a 15-episode miniseries and then the rest of the show. I feel like we've mentioned that once or twice.
Yeah, like they finished the story and then they still have half the show to go or something.
Yeah, they've kind of done that again. Right. Where it was they had the team unite, they had the villain's big plan of putting enormous cocoons around the world that summoned a bunch of monsters we've seen before, and we can reuse their suits because they're now giant, and also probably Earth would have been destroyed or something, and they defeated them, and they defeated the main villain, and
in episode 10.
Yeah. It was.
And you still have a whole year to go.
Well, it's kind of weird because then the bad guys just kind of carried on like none of that had happened, and they were just back to their evil schemes, and everybody was fine, even though they beat the big bad. Like, he exploded and everything, but obviously he didn't die because he's the big bad. So anyway, the show now seems to be it's normally around this time in Sentai shows that the Sixth Ranger shows up. Like this trope which has been going on ever since original Power Rangers has been reliable as clockwork, And so this time the Sixth Ranger is a weird dude in white with like an iron mask on his face.
Yes.
Okay.
And we think it might be a riff on the Alexandre Dumas novel, The Man in the Iron Mask.
But sure. I mean, that sounds appropriate for the themes that have been going on in this show.
It's just a little odd. Also, he has like Ivo, can you remember his weird like European name? It's something vaguely French.
Jeremy.
Okay,
Jeremy Brazieri.
Yeah, right. Okay, sounds like a restaurant.
Okay.
The White Spire Ranger.
Yes, yes. So, like, that's exciting, right? Because like they seem to have shifted the plot into another gear, which is cool. Like, we kind of are still waiting for them to like end up on normal Earth, where things will be much more expensive and much less expensive and much less green screeny. But
it doesn't. But I keep saying it's going to happen, everybody, and then they keep not doing it.
No,
right?
they seem to be in it for the long haul.
It's
but
just crazy.
The show's still fun. The Sixth Ranger showing up is always like a good way to inject a little bit of kind of like a new element into the mix, and it does look like this is going to be one of those years where the Sixth Ranger is initially like antagonizing the team before inevitably joining them.
He's also the narrator of the show.
Yes, they also did the actually I was there and I was the narrator, which was interesting. Not sure it served anything besides a bit of a weird twist, but I think that they're the show continues to be fun without like I don't think it's really stepped up to being exceptional at any point, but it's solid, and that's fine. I'm just interested to see whether they can take it to another level.
Right. I think the most interesting part of King-ohger to me so far, because like for example, I really liked Lupat, which had the two Ranger teams like facing off against each other.
Yeah.
And though the King-ohgers are they galvanize as a team to protect the world and beat the bad guy or whatever, they're all still kind of like they don't get along super well, right? They kind of are.
Black Ranger especially has been playing like every side,
right,
every which way, and he doesn't seem to be about to give that up. And so there's still a decent bit of tension in which adds some nice character dynamics.
Yeah, they're all kind of still not quite at each other's throats, but there's an uneasy piece, and so that's an interesting dynamic that I haven't necessarily seen a lot of in Sentai, which is normally quite formulaic.
I guess, like, to me, the most interesting thing is still the production.
Yes.
And, like, for better or worse, it's kind of hard to escape it, and I just kind of want, at some point, the show to become more interesting than all of the stuff about the making of the show, and that might be a tall order, but it's at the moment, I would say ticking along nicely, no cause for concern, but perhaps doesn't really stir the blood in the way that you might want, as much as a show for 8-year-olds can stir the blood,
Yeah.
Okay.
It's Super Sentai. I will say, I know people who don't watch that much anime or tokusatsu, and for whatever reason, they've really latched on to King-ohger.
Is it because it's like The Mandalorian?
I don't know. I think it's just the first one they watched.
Specific reason, or just this one happened to come up?
I think it's also that like every few years there's a fresh wave of, hey, do you know they're still making Power Rangers?
Right, I was going to say
crazy.
Yeah,
right.
So it's kind of cyclical.
Right, a cyclical nostalgia bug.
Yeah, new people
yeah.
roll into the fandom at regular points, Also, like that Power Rangers 30th anniversary special happened on Netflix
that's
recently,
right.
which probably prompted a few people to get into the source material.
Freaking that happened. Yes.
Yeah. It was weird. Rita murked that dude.
Yeah, you want to see if you were supposed to kill somebody?
Yeah, sure.
It was weird.
Anyway,
how about Kamen Rider? What's going on that end of the world?
Kamen Rider's entered kind of like the last third of the show, let's say here, which is where kind of the plot is just so overloaded now that kind of like stuff is still interesting, but it's kind of messy and flapping about a little, and that can be interesting. And I think in Geats it's mostly there in the good way. Basically, like the big plot thing which happened is that like Geats came back from the dead with no explanation whatsoever, beyond like a vague implication that like the goddess of desire did it because she's his mother.
And Kamen Rider is Jesus.
Yes. Also, it firmly supports our increasingly likely conclusion that he is literally Jesus Christ.
Well, it might have been Tsuburi, right? Awakening to her own goddess powers.
Yes,
also, right?
Possibly. But anyway, like out of nowhere, like what we're meant to assume, I believe, the original, like the first game master of the game has showed up. He's invisible for some reason, like probably so they can show off some fairly basic green screen effects. Mm-hmm. But
it's just a floating cloak, right?
Except sometimes he isn't. Remember,
yes, they did it. They did it the one time to show off, and then of course the rest of the time it's just fully wrapped around his body, so that we don't have to do the effect.
He's just a dude, But anyway, the long and short of it is they've turned it into a battle royale, which is like the way all of these things eventually go. Like eventually it becomes rider versus rider. So now the explicit purpose of the show is riders have to kill other riders, and kind of like
I think that came up last time is the save money on not having to make new monsters, Kamen Riders sell better, right?
Yeah,
the toys sell better.
I mean that has been why like over the past 25 years or so, we have gone from one Kamen Rider per series to like 8 or 9 Kamen Riders per series. But But like the whole point of like the way that this battle royale game originally started was that it was always riders versus the monsters, and since then, like we've gone through like I think it's like 5 or 6 versions of the game now, right, Iro? At least
something along those lines. Yeah.
And like first it was riders versus monsters, then it was monsters versus riders, and now finally it's riders versus riders. So the implication seems to be that this is the one for all the marbles, so to speak, and yeah, we've only just started, so it's hard to say, but they're doing a good job at like keeping the plot turning over. Also like I don't know, I think we've mentioned him before, but one of the characters who's literally just the statue of a frog might be the secret mastermind, and it's great because this statue of a frog just keeps showing up in unexpected places and like acting like a mafia don. And then when the dude who like voices the frog shows up in real life, he is dressed exactly like the statue of the frog, and it's great, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah, so it's all kind of a mess, but like an engaging mess. Like they're having fun with it. I'm having fun with it. I hope I assume you're also having fun with it.
As we just mentioned with like King-ohger, that these shows sort of have an issue of being comprised of a bunch of mini arcs that aren't necessarily well connected to each other. Instead of being a whole story, and Geats' premise is built to like facilitate that sort of status quo shift every so often.
Right.
So it's doesn't hit super hard. It's not like super jarring when it happens, right?
Yeah, the disjointedness is kind of built into the premise, and so they can sort of smooth the cracks over with that. So like the gear changes are a bit less jarring, so to speak, as opposed to like last year's show of Ice, where they very clearly were shifting in and out of arcs, and also it was bad. But
right. I guess just like because we're entering like the last fourth, like you said, and it's like I'm enjoying it, but I'm not super. I don't know how invested I am. Even at this point, it's like I don't know what Geats could do that would make me like genuinely feel like catharsis over the narrative, right?
Yeah, I mean, like, the thing is, like, by definition, tokusatsu heroes are, like, showy and invincible. But, like, Geats is that to the nth degree, you know? We've never really felt he is in danger of anything, and the character is not designed to do that. And that's not his actor's fault, you know? The character is written as, like, a slug, as a smug, slightly dickish kind of dude, and he plays that dude very well. But there's just... There's not necessarily a huge sense of stakes.
Yeah, the thing is, we've entered the part of the series where he's supposed to be like very emotionally invested. He is supposed to be very emotionally invested in what's happening, but it's like because he hasn't shown that type of emotion before, it doesn't land properly.
Yeah, honestly, I'm more invested in what happens to the supporting cast at this point. You know, which, as problems go, is not a terrible one, but it is
a very common
make
thing,
the show a little unbalanced in that regard. But it's still good. You know, I'm still having fun with it. I think both the shows are in a fairly good place at the moment, but we'll have to see. For Geats, especially, it's how they wrap this up could really have a big impact on how the series comes across overall.
Yeah. Once again, a rare time when Kamen Rider and Super Sentai are not awful at the same time.
Yeah. You know, like, two good shows. We have to cherish these opportunities.
Yeah, when was the last time it happened?
I can't remember. You know, it's been so long now. So many identical red.
Yeah,
like bug-eyed. So it just all blends together at some point.
Yeah.
All
right. Well, let's talk about some anime. And
must we?
Yeah, that's what we're here for.
Full-time Toku podcast.
You can't be the best anime podcast on the internet without talking about anime. But
okay, but isn't the best anime podcast the one where there's no talk about anime? Come on, admit it.
Hey, you
talk about the Tears of Kingdom for 2 hours.
This is actually a season that has good shows for once. Yeah. So perhaps not the season to make that argument. Let's put it that way.
Like, you tell me to stop shooting myself in the foot, and I say, give me an automatic weapon.
Yeah. Well,
Joe, why don't you tell us about my love story with Yamada-kun at level 999?
Yes, let's dive into my romantic comedy power hour here with both of I'll be talking about Skip and Loafer as well. Both of these shows heating up the romance a bit.
Oh my. Too hot for TV.
Well, let me this is a terrible way to follow up that statement, but you remember what I was telling you all about? Is it weird that a college-age woman was getting romantically entangled with a high school kid?
Too hot for TV!
Which, to recap for everyone...
Isn't there, like, 2 years in between them, though? Like...
Yeah, so to recap for everyone, he's a high school senior... And we know she's in college and she can drink, so she's at least, at minimum,
21?
20 is the drinking age.
In Japan, it's 20, yeah.
So she's at minimum 20 years old, and he's at maximum 18 years old. So it's likely that they're only about 2 years apart, which is not that weird. But also, we were kind of talking about, it is kind of weird depending on the context of, just because, like, your life changes so much in between those 2 years,
and
right?
Also, the weird part is just... those two groups of people do not generally have a great deal of interaction, right?
Yeah,
and I don't know, Japan fetishizes high school so much that
right, yes.
Yeah.
So in these episodes, the guild gets together and they decide to go to the school festival at Yamada's high school. I think. And it's not because it's not like the main girl's like, oh, I want to go see Yamada. It's more like the younger girl in the group who's still in middle school is applying to that high school or something and wants to see it.
I think this is the girl who is like into Yamada, right?
Yeah, or kind of was until she just became best friends with the main girl's name. Like, for the sake of ease, the main girl's name is Akane, so we'll refer to her as Akane. But
sure.
They end up becoming like good friends or whatever, and that sort of goes out the window. But
okay.
So there is like a reasonable explanation somewhat as to why they're going to this high school festival. But it is a little weird when Akane gets there and she's like, oh man, all these kids, they sure are tiring me out. And I'm like,
you're dating one of them, right?
Yeah, and there's like one. It's actually kind of funny where there's like a bunch of first year girls that, because all the girls, of course, are in love with Yamada because he's super hot, and
of course.
And so when Akane shows up and is talking to Yamada, she's getting like murderous death stares from all the girls, and there's like one bit where a bunch of like the first year girls come up and they literally depict them as like a group of baby chicks like chirping at her.
All right, yeah.
And she's like, oh man, these kids these days, they sure are wearing me out. I feel so old. And I'm like, okay, so those were first years, fine, but like it's a little sure. Weird.
I mean, it's like when you're a senior and you're dealing with freshmen, right?
Yeah. Or if you've ever gone back to your high school at any point in life, even if it's even if it's like a month after you graduate.
Yeah.
Like
I was gonna say, like in the show's defense, like the moment you leave school, like everything in school becomes super insignificant and like babble.
Yeah. So I'm not saying it's bad. It just, again, it's just the whole. It highlights how weird and kind of, I don't know, fascinating that whole gap is from just a small amount of time. But yeah. This kind of leads up to one of the better anime confessions I've ever seen.
Okay, all right.
And it's definitely different, where one of the other guys in the guild starts joking around and is like, hey, well, if you got all these girls, looking at you like they want to kill you, then, if you got to put up with that, you might as well just date for real, right? And, Akane...
I thought they were dating for real.
No, they're not technically dating yet.
Okay, sure.
But they might as well be. It's that one of those kind of things.
Yeah, it's anime.
And Akane kind of gets all flustered at this, and Yamada's like, yeah, no, probably should. That sounds about right.
Yep.
and there's some there's some things that have to get worked out after that, and including, but Yamada plays it pretty smooth. At one point she's like, oh, you were just joking, right? But like, hey, if I said, oh yeah, then hey, let's start
hypothetical situation.
Yeah, if I said, hypothetically, okay, sure, let's start dating. What would you say? And he's like, I would be honored. And I'm like, damn.
Okay, tone it down a little, kid.
Yeah, I was gonna. Simp energy is off the charts.
Oh my goodness!
And it ends like, it ends really nicely, where she's just like, you know what, you're a fun guy, let's go. And they like just go and enjoy the rest of the festival, and that's kind of where the episode ends. So I don't know like what is going to happen next, but like,
that sounds kind of sweet.
It was very sweet, and just like, again, I love anything that avoids the big, dramatic confession scenes that don't happen in real life, right? Like, I don't think I don't think things like this. Well, I mean, who knows? Like, everybody's different, right? Like,
this is more realistic than the big confession scene. Put it
exactly.
That way.
Yes. So I'm not going to go there. As I'm thinking back at different situations in my life, yes, this is probably more realistic.
Thousands of years ago.
Yes, back in ancient times.
When the gods were young.
When you couldn't just text message people Anyway. So, yeah, I, again, enjoying the show. Another 2 episodes with very minimal video game content. It was mostly like...
Sounds good to me.
This last episode,
that's a good thing. Right?
This last episode, they never go into the game at all. And yeah, and so, I mean, I mentioned last time, I kind of like when they do the video game stuff, but probably because they use it sparingly, for getting a good joke here and there, and it's kind of just more functionally the reason why these group of people have come together, right?
I'm just saying, like, if this had like Bofuri like ratio of game to real life, like, you probably wouldn't be as into it, I assume.
Yeah, well, because I mean, Bofuri uses it for a different purpose, right?
Yes, I know.
But that is a show where they're like 90% of the time they're in the game, right? Yeah. So this is a show where
the ultimate mark of whether this show will succeed or not is if they arrange to go on a date and then just like spend the entire date just sitting in a room at 2 PCs playing the game and like chatting across the room with each other.
Well, we'll see. I wouldn't rule that out, to be honest, but
hell yeah,
it's the type of show where we could make that work, I think. So, it's still a good time. As for Skip and Loafer, no, that's not a bad thing.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, they have a pretty good episode. I like how the characters the characterization works in this show, because like everybody feels closer to real people than like, how most anime comedies, everybody has like their one joke and they like pop in and do their one joke and then leave.
To be fair, that's not anime comedies, that's comedies.
Or just comedies in general, sure. Everybody in here has like more well-rounded personalities. They have good days and bad days. They have good moods and bad moods. Like there's different things that they're interested in, and and they actually kind of play around with that. So as the sort of, I guess, romantic angle starts to heat up, because I'm trying to, what's the girl's name? God, I have too many names to remember this.
Akane.
Mitsumi in Skip and Loafer is the main girl. She gets a call from her friend back home who she's been keeping up with, who lives out in the country.
Who was like seemed to be a major character in the first episode.
Yes, and she's still
and such.
Yeah, so she still keeps regular contact with Mitsumi, and she tells her that she has a boy she likes.
Whoa!
And they talk about what it feels like to have a crush on somebody, and how your heart goes doki doki, and you just want to run out of the room screaming when you're around them and everything.
Yes.
And as you can expect, as Mitsumi's like, I wonder what that feels like, she will be feeling this by the end of the episode, right? So, but it's interesting because the episode itself is kind of like, I don't want to say her and Shima, the himbo guy, get into a fight per se, but
argument. They
kind of have like a natural clash of their personalities, which feels like, and
very
it feels like
in real life.
And it doesn't feel like most anime rom-coms are going to pull out like dumb misunderstanding.
Yeah,
and it's not like there was a misunderstanding. It was like just like
they had different opinions.
Yeah, because like Mitsumi is very driven and wants to be prime minister and all that, and she's very diligent about her studies and everything, and Shima's just like, I don't care about school. And he just decides one day, I didn't feel like going to school. Yeah. It just doesn't go that day. And like this sets off this whole like, chain of events in Mitsumi's mind that like, oh, is he actually a delinquent or something like that? And they eventually kind of come to appreciate, that what things are important to each other, and it makes them even closer because they were able to like talk it out, and that's when she gets the doki doki attacks. But so it was very sweet and well done, I thought, on that. And again, just I like how they're handling the characterization.
That's like a more natural sort of conflict that arises between people in real life, rather than some sort of like insane misunderstanding of, oh no, they're like cheating on me with 5 other people or whatever. I don't know. Instead it's like, I don't know, we get into an argument because your friend like acts a certain way, and like just because of how their personality is, and you're
not just gonna like,
you think about things a certain way because that's how your personality is, and you just get upset, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's not like you're just going to like ditch your friend or stop talking to them, right? Like you're going to figure out what's going on, right? So anyway, the second episode, Mitsumi gets a hard lesson in politics.
Oh my.
Because actually time has passed.
She does want to be prime minister.
Yes, that's her. She like,
what's her position on Kaijin, right?
Well, she's been trying to find her way to get into the student council, but hasn't had an opportunity because she was just a first year, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
A little bit of time has passed where I think they said like at least 6 months have passed at this point, and it's like it's time for the student council elections, and she manages to get in as secretary, but her cool, hardworking senpai, who's a third year, she who is by far the best qualified for the job, loses the election and can only be vice president because some like asshole slacker guy who's super popular decided to run for president to make his school his like college applications look good or something like that.
Right. So it's politics is what you're saying.
Yes, even though he has no intention of doing any of the work or anything.
Yep.
And so she's trying to console her cool senpai who's very upset about this, and they work in. I always love me a good callback joke.
Yes.
And I don't remember if you can remind me if this was in the first episode or the second episode, but when she introduces herself to the class, you know how they have everybody get up and say their name.
Yeah.
And she says, I'm Mitsumi, whatever. And she in her head, it sounds like a joke where she says, I'm born to lead or whatever. And it's like the instant she says it, she realizes that what a weird, stupid thing to say in front of the entire class,
shit.
And nobody laughs or anything. Mm-hmm. So this guy, she like sees him walking down the hall with his friends, and just like in the middle of the conversation, you hear him be like, "Well, I guess I can't help it. I'm just born to lead." Ha 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 ha! And everyone's laughing, and she's like, "Damn it! He couldn't even pull off the joke."
Right? Damn. I've been upstaged to my own game.
So that was pretty good, but
that is pretty good.
Yeah, I was loving me a good callback joke. But yeah, so they work out their feelings later, and that realize that it's dumb high school council stuff. It's not really that important, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But so I mean, that show continues to be good. I think with that episode, I appreciate it's not all about Mitsumi and Shima's like kind of friendship / romance thing. Like it's really about her whole life and her other friends as well. Like it's a well-rounded package. And
I think when it comes to this kind of thing, you can go both ways, right? I think you can be very focused on the core romance, or you can spread it out. But obviously, you need to take whatever path you're going and do it well. It sounds like
I mean, and I think a lot of these shows end up doing, and it sort of is a stumbling point, is they start very, very focused on the one thing, and then at some point that has run its course, like just in what sorts of stories they can do, and then they are forced to branch out to the side cast, and so you have this like weird almost prologue before the show really starts, right?
You wouldn't be thinking about any particular show, would you, Hyro? Because I know I am.
I'm thinking about many different shows is the thing.
I was thinking about Horimiya.
I mean, that's a good example. There's like Shikimori, whatever. There's the Tomo-chan thing. There's, I mean, even Kaguya does this a little bit, but like pulls it off, right?
Yeah. No, I think to your point.
A thing. Yeah.
Right. To your point, I don't think it's inherently a right or wrong way. It's just, do you do it good? Or do you do it well?
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, like, consciously making that decision early on can have benefits as far as making it good goes, and it sounds like that they have decided quite early on that they're going to make this a wider story than just kind of like an ultra focused romance.
Yeah. So, both those shows really solid.
Good times.
Enjoying both.
Wow,
of those.
Good shows.
Yeah.
In my podcast.
Well, I guess speaking of good shows,
I know, right?
We should. I didn't have to wait too long this week to get to anime of the year.
Whoa.
Birdie Wing Golf Girl
It's
story.
time for a new type of anime.
All right, so
Birdie Wing, baby.
I think there's like a. And I'll admit I'm guilty of this. Perhaps a little bit of a fear that if we were going to switch over to Aoi's story, that we might drop off a little bit. And I'll admit, yes, her plot line is obviously not as like chaotic and deranged as Eve's time,
because she's still like trying to do the pro circuit instead of golfing in the mafia, right?
Yes, there was less criminal involvement in Ali's side.
But they still managed to get in some, like, absolutely ridiculous, totally dumb melodrama.
Yes, I was going to say some real juicy melodrama.
Which is so...
terminal disease.
Yeah, which is so over the top that it becomes entertaining, right? Like,
I tell you, when I was like, and I've only seen the first of the 2 episodes we're talking about here, but like the moment that I knew that that they were still firmly on course was when Aoi is out on the course and she's like looking through the crowd, and I actually said out loud, you know, if I were the producers of this show, I would just have Amuro show up in a wheelchair right there, and then guess what happens?
This show more than anything I've watched in a long time, they know exactly what the people want, and they give it to them.
Yes.
And I think that's a good example. Yes,
it's like it's so surreal because he's surrounded by these like completely regular spectators, and he's just there in a dressing gown in a wheelchair, looking like he's been copy pasted in from another scene.
Yeah,
and it's incredible.
Yes, Amuro, who worked himself to the point of hospitalization, who activated his terminal disease by golfing too hard to develop the high new golf clubs. The high streamer golf clubs for Aoi.
The Shining Wings golf clubs for Aoi to... It's so dramatic. Like, when he has the clubs and he's like, this is our first and last gift to you, my daughter, and then immediately collapses after he gives her the clubs or whatever. It's I wasn't sure he was going to survive these 2 episodes, to be honest.
Right.
Also, the implication that, Aoi, who, let's remember, has been playing with, the best of the best equipment you can possibly have up to this point, but the moment she gets her hands on these Ace custom clubs, suddenly she's, on a whole different level.
They're a new type of club.
Yeah. I will point out that incredible part is entirely by the translator.
I mean, they know what they're in.
Yeah, I know, but it's always worth recognizing that.
Yes, absolutely. Shout out to the localization team on that joke. But I mean, you guys know Gundam a lot more than I know Gundam.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Is there a Shining Wings Gundam? Is that a specific reference?
Yes and no. No, not the name Shining Wings, but the bag is clearly the palette of the High New Gundam, right? Which is Amuro's super special final Gundam.
Yes, he's Ultimate Gundam, basically. Yeah. So ultimate, it never actually appears on screen.
Yes.
Oh, wait, what? Did they just make the kit for it to sell it or something?
It's
kind of.
Is this more complicated than we can get into?
Basically, it only appears in a novelization, but they have made a bunch of kits of it because it's a cool design that people like.
Yeah. Yes. And so, yes, I saw that bag and I went, yes, that's the High New. Yeah. So, just very goofy.
Yeah, so and
let's not forget that this episode also reveals that Aoi's caddy is in indentured servitude to the family.
We'll get into that. Yeah, we'll get into that in the second episode. But yes, what's her name? Is it Amane?
Amane, yeah,
sure.
Amane Shinjo.
Yeah, she was sold as a child into indentured servitude to be Aoi's caddy.
Well, her parents, her golf parents died or whatever, and so she was taken in.
She's been secretly resenting, or somewhat this job for the past 10 to 15 years.
Aoi's mom is we'll look after you, and then immediately puts her into golf slavery.
We'll look after you but the contract says you must support Aoi until she goes pro, however long that takes.
Yes, and as it turns out, her cousin, was it, that is the top golfer?
Her aunt?
Her aunt, yes, who makes her an offer to join after she, and so there's a little conflict there. I think we failed to mention that Aoi's new clubs lets her shoot her own magic shot now.
Yes, shining shot.
She gets the birdie wings.
Yes, Her golf club explodes into a flaming phoenix, silver fire, and dispels the rain.
She needed to power up for her upcoming showdown with Eve, right? So she now also has her own magic shot, but so that was all ridiculous and fun, and it kind of carries over into episode 2, where they start. I think they start the tournament in episode 1, which is going to be like if Aoi wins this, she gets to turn pro.
The Japan Open.
Yes, the Japan Open, and she's going up against Amane's aunt or whoever it is, and who's like the top golfer in Japan, and she's got a commanding lead, and Aoi's fallen apart because she's so worried about Coach Amuro, who's I guess now she's
her dad.
Well, we know he's definitely her dad.
Well, yes, but she kind of knows now,
and she's like kind of now understanding, and yes, it leads up to that moment, Zig, that you mentioned, where he literally wheels himself out onto the golf course to encourage her, and this clears her mind so that she can make this miraculous comeback.
Her miraculous comeback from like 80th place.
Yeah, which I'll point out, it's really hard to come back in golf because you don't have like that much margin for error.
Yeah, there is a maximum amount you can come back, even if you hole in one every hole.
And that's like, you have to be also like, if you're behind, you have to also hope that the person ahead of you does bad, right? Yes. Like, you can't just like overpower them.
And that's what happens, right? She got shook. She got a bogey on that hole.
Yeah, it is a game where you have to play the law of averages.
Yeah, so coming back from like, I forget if she was like 10 strokes down or something like that, is absolutely absurd. But of course, this is Birdie Wing, and we get into our second episode as the tournament's going on, and this kind of becomes, I always caddy Amane her time to shine.
Amane's episode, basically.
Yeah, and I guess we're I don't remember if they mentioned this before, but we're told good thing that she's a certified weather woman.
Yeah.
What?
So her plan, her insane plan to win the Open is that she's tracked the weather, and she's pardon me. She's tracked the weather, she's interpreted the weather, and she knows Aoi can golf in the rain. She has the strength. She's learned how to go golf through the rain.
Yep.
Reika cannot. She'll be.
I suppose it's kind of academic to point out that in real life, rain normally stops play.
The idea. Well, yes, she factors that in as well, because usually they let you play for a little bit, and then at some point they call it, right? So, so yes, so she comes up with this plan to work around this incoming rainstorm, so that Amane can basically get into better position, and she knows that Reika will get rattled by the storm, and she says how like she's envisioned and imagined in her head all the shots that Aoi has to make during the raining part, and she tells her, all right, hit it that way and hit it as hard as you can that direction, and like she manages to still play good through the rain, and Reika tries to keep playing, just gets rattled by the whole thing, and then she so finally Reika's like, all right, I see what you're doing. Well, I'll finish my shot here, and then it's gotten bad enough they're going to call it. I'll just wait until they call the game, and then we'll wait until we come back.
But the rain stops.
Zig, I'm going to post the screenshot for you since you didn't see the episode.
Yeah.
Okay.
I eagerly await it.
Here you go.
That's a screenshot, all right.
Yep. So Reika's thinking this, and Amane's like, well, I'm glad I got certified to be a weather woman. And as she says that, the clouds part and the sun comes back out, and she's forced to play her shot.
Also, it's worth pointing out that she has like the fucking Gendo Ikari stuff going on here, like the blank glasses and stuff.
Also, the payoff of, because her name has the kanji for rain in it.
Yes.
A pun or play on words.
Yes, and the clouds part and the sun comes out, and Rika's so rattled that she bogeys the hole, and this gives Aoi the opportunity to come back with an amazing putt and win the Japan Open.
Hooray.
etc., etc.
Yeah, so with Aoi now in position to go pro and play like on the American tour, Eve has to hold up her end of the bargain and win the European tour so that she can also go to the American tour. And we catch, so I mean that's most of the episode. We catch Eve's bit in like the post credits, right?
Yes.
Right, yeah, the stinger.
And she's like in Scotland or something, and it's all foggy and everything.
Yeah.
And she's and her and Satome, her caddy, are standing out.
She gets the new type flash and dodges a golf ball.
She sees a ball like fly by her face, and she's like, "That's the blue bullet."
Yes,
and she looks over through the mist as like Leo walks out of the mist.
Right, and he's fucking elementary school killer.
Yes,
right?
and he has his new golfer Aisha. We don't quite see her at this scene, but we do see the absolutely absurd preview for next week, where apparently she just like
she's just doing the Happy Gilmore like running start drive. Yeah.
Yeah, so I cannot wait for next episode based on that preview, because she just like gets a running start and hits the ball as hard as she can.
Just of course, fake Sharazanable has a fake tween Lawlessoon like mega killer protege, right?
Like Sharazanable's thing is kind of taking impressionable teenagers and
loading them into a gun.
So it's a stupid show.
Fucking dumb.
It's so good though.
It's great.
So I'm assuming the next episode or two will be Eve winning the European Open in some
so that somehow they can finally face each other as equals.
Which would put us at I mean, how many episodes are we in now? Let's see real quick.
Well, this was episode 20, so we've got maybe 4 to 5 episodes.
Yeah, so assuming 21 and 22 are going to be Eve winning the European Open. That'll give us like 2 more episodes.
And then what they'll face off in America and have to face the American golfer, which is probably the black lady in the opening.
The mysterious African American lady who has been like in the opening from episode 1.
Yes, the final boss.
I mean, her deal is going to be just that she's really good at golf. No gimmicks.
She's just the best golfer in America, right?
Like that. That's just like the thing is going to be that she has no gimmicks. She's just really good at golf, I suspect. It would be very funny.
Make it so that because she's like 6.5 feet tall, she just can drive the ball a little farther or something. I don't know.
It would be very funny if Eve and Aoi make it to the pro circuit and then are instantly crushed because the pros are just so much better than
they're mere teenagers.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're hitting like pro golfer scores.
I know. Yeah.
So who knows?
I mean, Aoi still has to confront her genetic disease.
Yeah, she'll probably. Yeah. So there's a lot of
mother who has kept the truth from her all these years.
Yeah.
There's a lot of possibilities still, so we'll see. But yeah, we're definitely on path for the final showdown here. So, and I enjoyed our little Aoi side story here. They managed to keep that same energy here for the couple episodes.
Thanks, Birdie Wing.
Thanks, Birdie Wing.
Thanks, Birdie.
All right. Well. Let's talk about the one show that might be the only thing, the only show on this list that might be more crazy than Birdie Wing. Let's talk about Heavenly Delusion or Tengoku Daimakyo.
Okay, it might be more crazy, but in a very different way.
Very different movie. But there were some moments.
I tell you what, though. The golf in this show, incredible.
Yeah, so well animated. Well, Zig, so you started watching it since we last spoke, but what have been your overall impressions?
Yeah.
I have been super into it. I think that, okay, so I'm about to say something that is, like, going to sound damning. This show kind of reminds me of Darling in the Franxx.
I get it.
Kind
of see where you're coming from, yeah.
Conceptually, not like
I see
everything bad about that show was instead good, except the animation, which was good. No, I mean, I think that the thing about Heavenly Delusion that I've seen, and I'll try and be quick, but like I think none of the individual parts of the show are particularly new. We've had shows about like weird masterpiece society, Brave New World, like teen genius.
We've had like
things
Promise
before.
Neverland from the New World.
We've
Darling
had
Franks.
Yeah, we've had post-apocalyptic, survival / kind of like adventure shows before. But I think what I've been impressed by is how well this one controls the mood, controls the storytelling, and how well it has done to like endear us to the characters and make them seem like fully rounded individuals. I think the key to the show is that it's often very funny. Like, I think that there's a lot of humor in it, but there's also a lot of angst, there's a lot of horror, and I think that rather than clashing, they found a way to integrate all those things to make the characters feel so three-dimensional. They have facets. Sometimes they're goofy, sometimes, they're emotional, sometimes they're horny. All of these things, I think that it's just, like I said, I don't think any of the ideas are new, but the way they've been put together is really top notch, and I have been very excited to start it and go through it at pace.
Yeah, when you asked me, Zig, you were saying you were going to try to catch this in Oshi no Ko. I was like, prioritize this one because I think you're going to actually really like this one. This is very much something you're going to like.
I did prioritize. I did prioritize this one, and I did really like it. Although I had some caveats, but we'll talk about that in a second.
Yeah, I mean, I had a lot of the same initial impressions that you had, and I think as the show has gone on, I've appreciated that it's only, I think, managed to do those things better, which I think some of the, like, when you're talking about blending some of those elements together, sometimes you just need time for it too, right? And I feel like over time they've done a good job with it. I talked
that. Oh, sorry, Joe. I was just going to say, I think that one factor as well is that since this is an ongoing manga, we know we won't reach the end of the story here. We don't have to chase that end, and that means we can let the individual vignettes, the individual stories breathe a little more, give them a little more time.
Yeah. No, but I talked about last episode on the last episode of the podcast how I really love that scene where they were showing like the little town and people just kind of still going about their lives, and it's like I feel like that gets lost in like these types of stories a lot of times where it's only about, when you're talking about the post-apocalyptic angle, everyone is tired and depressed and
roving bands of marauders and
huddled in a dirty corner somewhere, and it's like that's not what humans are, right? Like you're going to have good times and bad times, and
civilization still exists. It is just a slightly more fractured, edgy civilization.
Started
than it was
betting
before.
On go-kart races.
Exactly.
Because that definitely doesn't happen in any Yakuza game at all. But I think that's one of the things which has appealed about this depiction of the post-apocalypse as well.
So, as far as these two episodes, I think we're all ready to get sad.
We met up with they're searching for the Immortal Order, who are said to know stuff about the man-eaters. They're allegedly putting man-eater parts into people, which allow those people to live longer, etc.
Which is true after a very, very distorted fashion.
Yeah, and also following up on leads to find the people that Kiriko is looking for, right?
Yes.
In particular, there's a mysterious Scarface doctor.
If there's a doctor skilled enough to put Haruki's brain into Kiriko's body, then perhaps this skilled doctor is the one skilled enough to put Hiroko parts into humans.
In general, it seems like a dude with low medical ethics is something they should be looking out for. So.
Yeah. So, so they kind of go through their investigation, I guess, where they think these this one group is the Immortal Order, but they're not. There's this other.
They're all some sort of. There's some sort of cult that opposes the Immortal Order.
Yeah,
calling them a cult might be a bit of a stretch. They seem to be like
I think they're meant to be that, but like
no, they are fanatical.
They are definitely meant to have overtones of cultishness.
Yeah, they've got a logo. I mean,
but I think the thing is that, like, obviously, when we're introduced to them in the first episode, those elements are downplayed, and then gradually they're ratcheted up and up as the worm turns, so to speak.
Yeah. Right, they kind of they try to pull like a little switcheroo where they kind of look like the good guys at first, and the people that they think are the Immortal Order but turn out are not, are the bad guys. But then they kind of, by the end of the latest episode,
so
they kind of switch that around.
The impression I got was that they are the Immortal Order. It's just that
they're not doing
they
the
don't
things
do any of the shit that they're meant to be, like they're supposedly doing.
And go ahead.
I think it's a good example of how, like, something that, kind of like, this show has not necessarily been huge on direct social commentary, but I think it's a good example of how, like, in a society that is on the brink where nobody trusts anybody and, like, everything is distorted through Chinese whispers and stuff, it's a good example of how, one thing has turned into this kind of, like, horrifying, like, body mutilating, transgressive.
Right. It's like these,
kind of like
these people
are evil when really it's just, here's a bunch of dudes and also a doctor who made some very basic prosthetic limbs for them.
Right. Yeah. It's like you have these people looking at their prosthetic limbs and going like, they're taking our feet for some sort of nefarious purpose.
When actually it's, no, you idiots, we cut off your leg because if we hadn't, you would have died.
Right.
Right. Yeah, I feel like that was, I don't want to say that kind of aspect of, I want to say it was heavy-handed, but it felt like kind of was like broadly gesturing at some big ideas and not really like doing much with them, but that's fine because I don't think it's really like the point, right?
Yeah, it's kind of the second
side point.
It's kind of like the second message sort of nestled in under the first one, so to speak.
So at the heart of this all is we learn what the so-called Immortal Order, the whole purpose of it, is apparently to keep this
the mysterious, creepy Dr. Usami who has a mutilated person on life support in the basement, right?
And
more machine than man now. Twisted and evil.
And he brings in Maru because he has basically touch. he's keeping her alive because if she dies, she's going to turn into a man-eater
of her disease.
Yeah, and he thinks Maru is able to basically end her life without that happening with his power. Right?
If she's halfway to being a Hiruko, then perhaps Maru's Hiruko killing powers can.
Yeah. He has just demonstrated that by killing a whole bunch of man-eaters in the basement of the building.
This also brings up: was the King of Hotels? Does the King of Hotels also have that disease?
Yeah, because he was able to phase through her chest, right? So. Pointed that was kind of establishing that yes, this is something that he can do, right? And we get this sort of, I don't know, Made in Abyss tier, really sad, emotional, and sympathetic scene where
I think. Sorry if I can just interrupt, Joe. Though I think that this is a really good example of writing, though, because it is. It's a sad scene, it's an emotional scene, it's clearly here to make you sad and emotional, but it also advances some important plot points and ideas, right?
Yes.
Okay, the idea that, like, people are being infected and turning into these things, and that Maru can kill them because they are close to being man-eaters. That's all good gristle for kind of like the background information we're learning about the world, so it is simultaneously a terrible personal tragedy story, but also helps fill in some important things about the greater mystery that's going behind. And I just think that's really good, efficient, well put together storytelling.
Yeah, and this is not a type of, so when the time comes to actually kind of perform this, what they need Maru to do. It's not an easy type of scene to animate and act and direct and everything, and still kind of give it, the necessary, I guess, dignity and like weight. And as we've said, this show has looked amazing all series, and we're mostly talking about like the action and but in this very slow, quiet scene is some of like the most impressive animation and directing we've seen in the series so far. When it's real, and all it really is them kind of unplugging some machines and moving a body out to the patio. But it's like
I think go on over.
There's because like we've seen him kill Hiriko before, and it's like the supernatural way he enters them and just like viciously crushes their heart or core or whatever,
very shonen anime.
But then you get this whole scene where he very slow and like his hand goes in and crushes it. But here we get the whole long like mind palace, right, where he slowly goes into this dimension and just like tenderly rips apart this core.
I was very grateful they didn't like that. I was grateful that they did it that way and not depicted it the way it worked with everything else, right?
Because but
it is like stylistically there are some similarities, right? But it's a different rendering of the
he does it with more empathy, right?
Yeah. And I think they shift to a palette, to a very white palette with strong reds and blues and very kind of like wispy watercolor animation that just looks fantastic. It's so good at like just we are in a completely different place, a completely different thing here. I have a major criticism about this scene, but I want to hear if you guys have anything else to say first.
I think overall it was good, and I think it was a good job of like making you care in a short amount of time, right? Because we didn't really know these people up until
arc.
But by the end, you still feel, I think, the weight of it and everything. But the next thing I have to say is going to have to deal with something else. So if you want to go ahead first.
I think the music is bad here. I think they go full orchestral bombing, like all the strings and sad strings and piano, and it's too much. I think it's way too much. I think that it took me out of the moment a little.
I guess I didn't really notice the music, so maybe that's not good or bad, but I do feel like it'd probably be more appropriate to just not have any music at all, right?
Yeah, I absolutely would have said no music, but instead they go like full Disney score on it, and the reason it stands out is because everything else is so masterfully minimalistic about this.
Though I will say, like related to the music thing, the like acoustic slow version of the ED is great though. I like that a lot.
No arguments there at all. I think that is much more appropriate for the closing scenes of this episode. And again, it's not offensive. It's not a crime, but I just think that, it feels manipulative in a way that the rest of the scene is not. And I really would have preferred something more laid back, or even just no soundtrack at all here. That's my only real critique.
Yeah. So, and I think just to wrap that part up specifically, like the doctor's choice at the end, what he does is like, again, looping back to, I think there's kind of a theme going on with Maru where it's like, what is your responsibility to help all these people, right? And like how everybody's kind of making their own choices. Like, I mean, technically he could have maybe gone on to help other people or whatever, but he's like, I'm not a doctor. This was my purpose and everything. And he made that choice. So it's just more things for Maru to think about as he's trying to process his role in all this, right?
And I think that there was a risk there that Maru's breakdown there could have been a little emo, let's say, but I think actually they handle it very well. His anguish feels earned. I think the responses feel genuine, and they don't milk it too much.
Right.
It's a fairly brief scene, and he sort of gets himself back under control fairly quickly, but it feels visceral and real, and I think that that's about the best way you can do a scene like that. You communicate the trauma, but in a less histrionic way.
No, it helps because he was like very apprehensive about even the mercy kill.
Right.
You like using it to do that, right? And so sort of can culminate in that of him like freaking out a little bit. And we get the sort of reveal, right, that the Dr. Usami and his charge are two of the kids in the nursery.
So was Usami meant to be that? Because I got that he's...
There's the one kid in there who had a thing for Mimihime and was like a super genius who was always tinkering with technology and stuff.
Yeah.
And so that's how he made all these like prosthetics.
Yeah. So they don't make it super obvious.
See, I don't think I got that at all because
I felt like I was
Iroh,
putting
I think
those
you're
pieces
right.
together halfway through the episode, right?
Because I understood that the woman was one of those children because, of course, it reveals that she has the plate in her where her eye was, with the symbol of the institute on it, and that's the thing that the Doctor is playing with before he shoots himself.
Yeah. And when they show the end scene, I feel like they showed her eye or something at the end too to kind of like make the connection, like that was her because she has like the same like eye color and eyelashes and all that. But I think Iroh, I don't know if they were explicitly saying what you were saying with the other guy with who they
don't explicitly say it, but I think it's clear to me.
Yeah, I think I kind of made
it's an implication, right?
So is the implication that these children are clones and they're being grown? And
I think
that's what we don't. That's what we don't know, right?
I think that the nursery segment is in the past, right? Like because they're trying to create like super children before the day of fate or whatever they said, and
we kept seeing, we kind of saw like the I guess the beginnings of the man-eaters, right? When
the man-eaters are all based on the designs that
when they zoom in close on, I mean, the disease, Tario had the same disease in the nursery, and when they cremated him, there was a like core left over.
So
Tokyo is a girl in the institute, and not a boy with the same face as Maru, so, and he was born like right after or during the cataclysm.
So there's still questions there.
I
was like trying. My brain was going to the fact that like Maru's looking for heaven, right? That's what whatever that means.
I've assumed all along that heaven is the institute,
right? But like if that's, and then I'm like, okay, well, like I don't know, heaven traditionally is where you go after you die, right? Like, is there a chance that stuff is happening in the future? But I think it's more likely it's in the past, right? That's the obvious play.
Yeah, there. I mean, I had not actually. As obvious as it is in retrospect, I'd not actually considered perhaps that the two segments were not taking place simultaneously. But of course, it's entirely possible.
I was sort of putting this theory together while I was like going back through the first few episodes with you, Zig, because we were catching up, and so I could like reevaluate some of that stuff with knowledge from later.
Yes, right. If you were going back a second time, yes, it would be more obvious, right? But yeah, no, Zig, I think I get what you're saying, because like in the post credits part, they frame it as if she was waking up from a dream, as if like it was either happening at the same time or like
it's kind of a subconscious kind of like the way I took it was as kind of a kind of like an echo that was coming back to her. And so I think that there is a possibility of that, and that would also explain Maru, being similar to Toku. I mean, opposite sex clone is a classic sci-fi clone.
Or just her child, right? Because she was she
slept with that dude,
sleeping with Kona, and like in the episode before it was revealed that she was sleeping with Kona, she was throwing up in the room and was like, "Oh no, am I also sick?"
Yes, that's a good point. Throwing up only ever used to communicate morning sickness.
Yes.
So
well,
yes. Yeah. Or drunk.
No. I'm being literal. Like,
yeah. All right. Well.
Yeah. Great show.
That show's real good.
I'm told the next arc of this show is polarizing.
Interesting.
I'm told it's potentially
derailing.
Like, I was told it's sort of like the equivalent of like hitting the Bondrewd stuff in Made in Abyss.
Sure. I mean, I think the show has shown a willingness to engage with fairly controversial topics so far, and I think it's mostly handled them well. So let's see how they do. And
the adaptation has been
top
good,
notch.
Great, right? So
no argument there.
Yeah, it's been a great show.
G, are you with us?
Yeah, wow. That was a great discussion of Heavenly Delusion. I totally agree with whatever you guys said.
Oh, yeah? Okay.
Things that you were definitely listening to us say.
That might be a smooth enough transition that I don't actually have to edit this.
Got it in one.
Well,
yes.
I was just pensively listening in on your guys' very...
Yeah, I know... I know you can't say anything because you probably know what's happening, but...
have you read the manga, Jay?
I am familiar with the source material.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, so you get to hear all of our speculation and just get to laugh to yourself quietly, I'm sure. But, yeah, that show's good. Let's move along. G is back with us, and with him here, we're officially allowed to talk about robots again.
Just in time.
Just in time. So let's talk about Mobile Suit Gundam, The Witch from Mercury, which, of course, only one episode this week because we had another recap or something.
Yes. So it'll be a short discussion, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure we'll have nothing to say about this episode, but...
I mean, the robots show up so little in this episode. I mean, it's just, just Ariel. Just Ariel's there.
No, I feel like this is like...
Wow, cool robot.
This is like Shadiq outplaying Mirine and then Prospera outplaying everyone here in their various...
The bald-faced... The bald-faced snake-like attitude of Lady Prospera in this episode is... She is
can just be blatantly distrustful to literally everyone, and then...
Right, I mean...
But because
you're telling me the designated mask villain of a Gundam show might be a conniving piece of shit?
I've never betrayed anyone in my entire life.
So we've all laughed at Char Aznabul's, audacity to, the way he behaves, but, Lady Prospera is literally, just... openly dealing with every faction in front of every other faction.
Yeah.
Knowing that now that, because now that Delling is out of the picture, now that the Beneri group is in this very, uncertain place, right? They don't know who will be their next leader, even though, Shadiq is leading in the polls. And so everybody is desperate to get that edge in what, everyone is convinced that the corporate wars are happening, right?
Yeah. And I mean, the thing about Lady Prospero is, you don't have to hide your double dealing everyone if you have the thing that everybody wants.
Right. Exactly. Right. She has the Gundam technology, and
everybody
wants it
dealing
now.
with everyone. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the thought that just popped into my mind right now is that the thing that allows Mirine to take the election is that Delling will wake up and endorse her.
Maybe.
Maybe. I could see that. I mean, I guess it would be an interesting contrast, right? Because, again, right, Delling is Mirine's father, and, Prospera is ostensibly Soletta's mother. And we're definitely seeing now the contrast in how these two behaved and treat their children. And I'm very, very curious how that is going to play out in the end, and I think that will probably require Delling to regain consciousness to continue that thread.
I'm not so sure. I think it's more likely that somebody kills him, and that's the inciting incident that just causes everything to break to pieces.
Yeah. But also this show is juggling so many plot points. Who knows if they'll have time to get to that?
Yes, we're only just, for example, Dr. Bell is taken in by the Space Assembly League, who has shown up twice and has never been clearly stated what they are.
Yeah, that's...
We have to just, put the pieces together and go, oh, they're some sort of official, governmental...
Space UN inspectors.
Right, the Space FBI,
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, I'm sure the show thinks it established them well because they appeared in the first episode, but that's not the same as establishing them well.
And it's like, what I thought they were, I was correct, but also it's like, I had to think, wow, how did they act the three times?
Like, this is the thing we keep bringing up of like how much would this show maybe have benefited from. Look, if we can't get a full 50 episodes, could we get like 36 or something? Like 3 cores. But I think it speaks to the strengths of the show that, like, for all of our, I think, completely valid criticisms of maybe the slightly seat of your pants way they have approached the world building, that the emotional beats, the big emotional plays and swings of the show continue to be very strong. Sort of set the scene, right? The one episode we have is in the aftermath of Suletta losing Ariel in the Astakasia screw job. And we kind of, obviously the question is, how is Suletta going to react? And we kind of get this like montage of like, oh, don't worry, she bounced back. She's just trying to live her life as a normal schoolgirl.
Suletta being
obviously
hyper cheerful.
Suletta forget her about Mercury, about Ariel.
And
Choo Choo knows better.
Of course, of course. That is the most important thing about this episode, is we get a good amount of Choo Choo screen time again, and of course, we're all hoping that, right, like, where is this going? Is Choo Choo going to teach Suletta anger? And not quite. It's more just like Choo Choo's forthright personality is sort of the catalyst that pushes Suletta to at least attempt to confront Miorine about her actions.
She doesn't teach her anger. She's trying to teach her about being honest with your feelings, right?
Honest and not assertive.
So... yeah, she kind of drags Suletta over to going to see Mirin.
We all got to talk to our boss.
Got to talk to the boss, and it kind of confirms that Choo Choo is right, because Suletta's like, yeah, I do want to go see Mirin, right? Like, it's not, and it's really sad because I feel like Suletta continues to be characterized like as an actual child, which is appropriate because she's an actual child. But like her knack for her like tendency to blame herself for all this is very like, I think, age appropriate maybe, and it's very sad because it's not her fault.
I think I think it's also especially like the result of her upbringing, right?
Yes.
Like, she has been
hyper sheltered, right?
Both sheltered and taught to have a great degree of codependency on her 2 family members. Her mother and Ariel, right? And that is sort of, and this is where Okochi, you can really feel the Okochi writing in this episode, where he's like delightfully tightening the strings and throwing his characters into like their absolute nadir, right? Because
you put them out on the tightrope. You put them out on the tightrope and make the rope thinner and thinner until they have to do something, right? Like, it's
exactly right. And so Suletta tries to confront Miorine, but rather than find Miorine, she finds Ariel seemingly unattended, and Ariel even beckons Suletta to pilot her again, which is how we get.
Suletta is invited into the like mind palace of the Aries. Aries, the children of the coven, as they call themselves. And they basically say, you only exist as like a physical extension of our will, and we don't need you anymore because we've been upgraded enough.
Yes, it is the things that we have all speculated have come out in the open, that Prospera has not. Suletta is not just the clone of Eric Samaya. She is a clone of Eric Samaya, and she just happens to be the clone that was allowed to keep her physical body to be used as the like vessel through which Ariel could be piloted. But the Airy Cabal informs Suletta that once they hit permit score 8, that Ariel will be fully self-independent, that it will no longer require a pilot and thus Suletta is no longer necessary. And this is, framed obviously as a very like traumatizing moment for Suletta because, I think in many ways, right, psychologically, Suletta could square away losing Ariel in the sense that, well, it was
I lost the duel, so it was my fault.
Right. To have Ariel straight up say, actually, I don't want you anymore, is like, it drives the knife in such a...
To literally, like, fly you out into space and then shoot you out of my cockpit. Kick you out, right?
Right. And, of course, the thing that you really take away from this reveal, though, is that Prospera and Ariel are just guilty of the exact same problem that Miorine is, because, as we all speculate, and as the end of the episode reveals, where Prospera and Ariel have a one-to-one, it's not that they necessarily want to abandon Suletta, but more...
They don't want to involve her in their revenge scheme.
Right. We are now approaching a crossing of the Rubicon. Whatever Prospera is about to do next is a point of no return, and Ariel is apparently fully on board with it. Ariel's like, yeah, dude, let's kill Delling.
I mean, considering Ariel's original personality, saw their father get wasted by Delling's attack.
So, but they do not want to involve Suletta in it, right? There is this idea that Suletta is in Prospera's mind, in Ariel's mind, and in Miorine's mind. There is idea that Suletta is untainted, that she does not have to become a part of this
without taking go to school,
right? Without taking into consideration what her actual feelings
what she
are.
wants, right?
Yes.
And I think that is going to be a sort of character turn with Suletta going forward. It's asking herself.
Go ahead,
Iroh.
Oh, no, just what she wants. Yeah.
Go
ahead, Iroh. Yep.
It's an interesting reversal because like a lot of these types of shows, we joke all the time about like, well, war is bad, and like, these child soldiers who must pilot these death machines to, and like, it's such a terrible thing that these children have to pilot these tools of violence. And so, of course, we are abstractly thinking this about Suletta as well, but then the show can contextualize Suletta being forcefully ejected from the cockpit of her violence machine as like, no, stop, please, let her back in. It's like, let her chill. It's all she wants is to stay inside with Ariel, right?
Yeah.
And so it can contextualize this thing that technically it's a good thing that Suletta is being, not being dragged along into this act of violence that is sure to follow, but because Suletta's personality and character and stuff, like,
it's treated as a tragedy.
Right, she's being kicked further down the stairs from her perspective, right?
But it's actually not that different from past uses, except that the difference is Suletta is so badly gaslit that she wants
right, that's what I'm saying.
Whereas at least, like, Amuro and all of his successors were like,
I think
what
Iroh's
is bad, but I have to do it.
Right. What I think Iroh's more gesturing at is that every Gundam, every good Gundam understands that you that academically, rationally, you should not be rooting for the child to pilot the robot. But at the end of the day, most Gundams eventually arrive at the conclusion that, well, they got to do it, or they're the only one who can do it, etc.
The robot
and so to have a show,
very cool.
It is very cool, yes. But to have a show internally recognize, like to have the show's in-universe adults internally recognize. It is terrible that we make Suletta pilot the Gundam. And our actions, our intentions, whatever, like, I mean, the actions themselves are misguided because at the end of the day, what they are not doing is actually communicating with Suletta. But, like, the intentions seem to be a recognition that children shouldn't have to pilot war machines.
Right. And I guess my argument is just that, like, I don't necessarily think that that's super unique to the franchise. Like, the franchise has always been, well, if there were another way that involved not making the children pilot the war machines, but there isn't. So,
but the show's like, for example, we're watching Zeta right now, right? And, like, is there an actual real reason why Char can't pilot the Zeta?
I mean, there is in universe, but it's kind of finicky.
I know, but you get what I'm getting at. Right? If we're talking about, like Camille's the only one skilled enough to pilot the gun, I was like, no, he's not. Like, there's a lot of other qualified people who could potentially pilot that thing, and it's not like anybody in that show is actively trying to rip him out of the cockpit.
I mean, yes, but that's because that show is smart enough to imply that most of the people around him have ulterior motives.
Well,
and
yes.
they're perhaps not the best people in the world.
No.
For example, one of them is literally Shah Aznavour. So,
yes. But anyways, I guess what I'm
anyway,
getting at...
let's. I think Iro wanted to say something, so let's.
That's what. No, never mind. I said, you're right. You told me enough. Like. You're right. I didn't consider like
I'm not
how it was in the rest of the series as well.
I'm completely undermining the
theory.
I'm just like I'm just saying that, like, this is a particularly striking use of something which has come and gone in the franchise before to a certain extent. I think it's one of the more effective and powerful uses of it. Because.
I mean, I think it is definitely like the idea that, like, Gundams have been personified in the past. There has always been this element of, like, because, not to paint with too broad a brush, right? But there, being Japanese works of fiction, right? There's always this implied dormant spirit that lies in, even in the real robot shows, right? There's that.
Right, there's always that tends to be metaphorical rather than
right.
literal,
And so to make it literal, and in the way it does, I think it's a very careful, like, rope to balance, and I sort of appreciate Okochi's willingness to look at, like, how careful of a balance this could be and just go for big emotional swings, because even if, like, maybe, like, rationally it doesn't always come together, in the moment it feels like it works. I mean, a minor version of this that I need to point out, right, is how would you confess your sins to Cecilia Dote?
I don't know who that is.
Maybe I would in the right context.
the tan girl, the one who was always sitting down in the the dueling committee girl.
There's a comical scene where Martin, who is the only one left on school because everyone else has gone to see Mirine, and he's still injured. He goes to the counseling room, which is a little just square windowless room with a
it's a cyber confessional
with a horror in it.
No, but you got to understand, it's a confessional. As in, there's a little confessional screen and altar with a horror implanted into the center of the altar.
It's deliberately patterned off of the confessional, like, elevator in Utena.
Sure.
And so, yes, he's like talking to Haru. He's like confessing, that he ratted out Nika to Haru. He's like, "Am I a bad person? Didn't I do the right thing?" And then the fucking panel of Haru opens, and Cecilia Dote is sitting right there.
And she just says, "Wow,
right?" Honestly,
and she's like, "Wow, I didn't know you were that much of a fucking rat," with, like, the smuggest grin on her face. And it's like, okay, here's the thing: you take, like, 3 steps back. This is an insane scene to include.
Just completely
in
ridiculous.
This episode. It's absurd. Like, why is it here? Like, Martin is like a bit role character. He had one important narrative role to play, which was narking out Nika.
One step above bit role, but yeah.
He's fine. But he is part of the Earth House bunch, right? And, like, and so there's multiple levels of this. Of, like, all right, we have a scene devoted to him. We're gonna have a scene devoted to him in a sci-fi confessional booth. And so now you're on the multi-level of, like, oh, the school has a confessional booth? Okay. And then the third level of this confessional booth is run by the smuggest bitch in the school.
Uh-huh.
I mean,
she's got dirt on everyone.
Like, I'm not sure, like, how literal you are asking for the response to be, but my argument would be this scene is here to reinforce the idea that the school is actually an environment when you can't trust anything and anybody will
course. It's just
fuck you over.
It's just the literal events are just so silly.
Yes, I mean, it sounds a little, I know writers who use subtext, etc.
Right, but that's also kind of what I love about it, which I think is, like, that scene is a microcosm of at his best, Akochi's skill as an anime writer is like, it doesn't necessarily have to make sense. It doesn't necessarily have to be rational. If in the moment it still evokes a strong emotion in you, then it's a well-written scene. And that one bit just feels like it represents that entire approach to anime writing.
I mean, I guess if I have a concern at this point in the show, it's we still don't know what the big thing which Prospera and Ariel and like this entire conspiracy has been leading up to. And, they're talking a big game about how, we want to protect Suletta, we want to, it's so unfair that she's being forced into, being our patsy. But I think that, there are multiple ways you can go with that, but you have to deliver a fair, put yourself in the shoes of the villains for a moment, right? The villains are saying, as the villains always do, that the ends justify the means.
Of course,
right?
Yeah.
So therefore, you have to have a fairly monumental end to justify the means that they have gone through. And I think the danger here is that perhaps the end will not seem significant enough to us, the viewer. That's just my,
I
definitely
see where you're coming from, Zig, and I guess a lot of that will definitely hinge on.
What I'm saying is, I think the end is human instrumentality.
Well, because like on some level, right, like the actual goal of some of the villains has been apparent for a while now, right? Prospero wants revenge, right? She wants revenge on Delling,
right?
And she believes that allowing Ariel to enter Permit Score 8, which will then make Ariel fully autonomous.
Yeah, I mean, we've already established that Quiet Zero or whatever, like that's the plan, right? Is make instrumentality to bring Eri back. That's Prospera's goal. So we know what the big goal is. It's just like,
well, have we established that though?
Yes, that's 100. Especially in this episode. I mean, you didn't see this episode, but she literally says it in this episode. But I think it was pretty clear even before that.
The thing is though that like you say, her motivation is revenge, but if she just wanted common or garden revenge, she could have capped.
It's revenge and it's revenge and being with your daughter again. That's the
right. Yeah, but what I'm saying is that clearly, like, her desire for revenge has evolved into some sort of monomaniacal,
Yes, of course.
Right.
Of course, as is wont to happen with anime villains, but
right.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm saying that, like, yes, the motivation might still be revenge, but the end product can be very different depending on what sort of scale you're grading on there.
I mean, a great comparison point here, right, is you could say that all Gendo Ikari really wanted was to see his wife again.
Yes, I mean that's kind of the same thing that they're going for, but it's like, well, if you're all turned into orange Kool-Aid, then does it really count?
Please, the generally accepted term is Tang.
Oh, sorry, Tang. Yes.
Yes.
Do they even make it? I don't know, but or in this case, if you're all just in the data storm, does it really count as being with your daughter again? Right? Like it's the same kind of problem. But
right, yeah, I'm just saying that we, in very rough terms, like, I would be disappointed if it is something prosaic as we did the climax of Evangelion again. I think this show is better than that.
Are we going to end with Suletta sitting in a chair while everyone says congratulations?
No, we're going to end with Miorine choking out Suletta on a beach.
Okay.
Well, don't give the shippers what they want.
Don't do that. That would give everybody what they want. But
don't threaten me with a good time.
All right. So I want to cap this off with some speculation. Ariel has rejected Suletta and is now in the hands of Prospera as we're heading toward Earth. We even get a shot of Prospera piloting Ariel at the end. Does Ariel become the new bad guy mobile suit and they repaint it red or purple?
Ooh,
and Suletta gets a new upgraded Gundam, possibly the one that we saw Jaturk working on.
Yes, right. That is the other plot we did not mention.
And she has to fight for her wife with her own two hands. Is that the direction we're headed?
I certainly wouldn't mind that as a a reversal of fortunes. I guess me being having watched a lot of Gundam, I don't know. I mean, I guess if any writer is willing to do it, it's Akochi. But I I don't know if that will necessarily be like the thing that becomes the story for the remaining 6 or so episodes, right? Like, I feel like, I don't know, like to make the original Gundam the final villain of your Gundam is,
I don't know. Unicorn did it.
I think it. I mean, but I think it thematically would make sense because, like,
it would. But remember, like, I'm kind of with G here because remember, Gundam exists to sell toys, and like,
yes, you can sell a red Ariel.
Yes, but you will
definitely buy that.
What if the Gundam was evil, but then it turned good again? Then you could sell 2 different.
Then you sell a third Ariel that has magic wings or whatever.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes. Yeah. No. I just think it's a big ask for them to make the titular Mobile Suit the bad guy. Like,
I do think, though, to a certain extent, I think Gel, you are sort of on the right cardinal direction, and that I think like Suletta, in terms of the characterization, I think a big aspect of Suletta going forward is like, look, we were all like, now she's at rock bottom because Miorine dumped her, and it's like, no, this is rock bottom, right? Like, this episode,
yes,
is I mean, bottom of the
we once again end with another episode with Suletta bawling her eyes out as she floats through space. It's very sad.
I think here begins the Suletta. The as I have now termed it, the take Suletta out for ice cream arc. The somebody just get her an ice cream or a soda, please. Somebody, choo, take her out for a drink. I know you're all technically underage, but
yeah,
like the recovery arc, I guess, is what I really mean.
Yeah, and I mean that's like, though I mean the way we're headed, it's got to be like Suletta finding what she really wants and standing up for it, right? And not just now that she's been hard cut off by her mother and her sister, quote unquote.
Yeah. And if that does mean a confrontation with her family, I could see that to an extent, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, Prospera's wearing the mask, right? She's got to be there. Yeah. Whether she's directly piloting the bad mobile suit or indirectly, I feel like that would be appropriate. But yeah. All right. Well, we'll have plenty more to speculate on next time when we actually have more episodes, but we still sure found a lot to talk about with one episode with that, I guess. Let's move on to Oshi no Ko.
Yeah.
And I have things to say. There was a lot of buzz, particularly about the most recent episode.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to mention...
With episode 5?
Yeah, is episode 5 the most recent or 6?
6 is the most recent, 5 is the one from last week.
Well, before we talking about either one of them, I wanted to talk about there was an interview with Aka Akasaka.
Yes, I did get around to reading that.
And that came out like the day episode 5 came out. And the one interesting question, because usually those interviews don't really have any meat to them, right? They're just promo fluff. But one of the questions was, how does Oshi no Ko compare to your previous work, which of course was Kaguya-sama Love is War.
Right.
And his response was basically, Oshi no Ko is like the type of writer that he sees himself as, and that Kaguya-sama is basically a comedy formula that he did at the recommendation of his editors.
Oh no, yeah. It's the Spy Family is bad and I hate it all over again.
I don't necessarily think quite that level, and also even the Spy Family thing is taken out of context.
Yes, that's the joke.
He did mention that he does incorporate some of the Kaguya-sama style comedy into Oshi no Ko, which we do see in episode 5, I think. But I think this is only supporting this guy wishes he was Nisio Eisen theory.
Why would anybody want to be Nisio Eisen?
I'm not questioning why you would want to say that, but it feels like if you recall, in the very first time we talked about Oshi no Ko, I was like, this felt kind of like Nisio Eisen light in some regards. And
I mean, the main reason that you would want to be Nisio Eisen is cha-ching.
Well, yeah, but anyway, I feel like, and again, we try to judge these things, of course, in as much as we can in a vacuum without as the context, but the context there, folks. So just keeping that interview in mind, it was interesting over these 2 episodes because, so episode 5, to me, the biggest thing was mostly the comedy in episode 5, whereas episode 6 is not fun at all. But episode 5 is so basically we actually, I guess 2 things happen. One, Aqua gets casted onto a dating show, I guess,
right? Like a very like intentionally like Terrace House inspired.
Yeah, it's more of like a reality put people in a room and see who hooks up type of show, right?
Right, like the sort of like, what is it, like sort of quote unquote unscripted, like more naturalistic reality TV show, but obviously like
and that comes more into that comes more into play in episode 6, but we see a little bit of in episode 5 where he meets some of the people there, and weird to me, well, maybe not weird, but interesting. He seems to almost be more sympathetic to the production of this reality show than to the drama the drama production.
I think it's an interesting perspective, right? Because like what he recognizes, or I think it comes from the direction of, and it sort of becomes more apparent in episode 6, right? That like Aquamarine initially went into this kind of condescending, right? Like kind of like, all right, like I'm doing this as a favor, right? Because the premise, right, is that he gets this gig because the producer from the prior show said that he'll like spill the dirt on I, right?
Right.
And that will get him closer to finding out who like his father is, right? And he kind of goes and be like, all right, I'll do this out of obligation, right? I'll play the role of the pretty high schooler, right? And it's kind of like he comes to sort of appreciate that, you know what, like even sort of for something like this, something that I personally find this like vapid and shallow, like there's real production going into this, right? Like that the actors are here to do their jobs and people are being professionals about it.
Right. And even though, I guess even though it is not, it is actually unscripted, even though there's like direction and stuff going on. The people are still like able to make their own decisions on what they decide to do on the show, right? So that was kind of like surprising to him, I guess. But
and then we kind of leave on that for a bit for this episode, anyways, because then the other like kind of major plot line is
we actually get Ruby screen time.
Weird.
and her. She has convinced Kana, the former child actress, to join her idol group with their production company, but they have no plan or anything. Like they have nothing.
I mean, I'll be real,
out.
Man. Like these 2 episodes have because like is this idol group that Ruby has formed just like a glorified after-school hangout club? Because they don't really seem to be doing a lot of idol stuff.
They would say like, well, we don't have any songs, we don't have any dances or anything. Like we have nothing. Nothing. We're just like
like Kana mentions like, like I have a following and like I could probably leverage it to a certain extent, but also like I'm seen on the internet as a washed-up has-been child actor. And like Ruby has like 0 online presence at all, right? So it's like
so they turn to the production company has their top YouTube star, who I can't remember his name right now, but he's a fitness YouTuber, I guess.
Yeah, I guess his gimmick, right, is like, and this is sort of real, or my understanding is like this sort of gimmick is like based off of like some real like Japanese YouTube like personalities, is like a fitness YouTuber, but he wears nothing but like a Speedo and a bird mask, right?
Sure.
It's like
he's a super.
And he talks in a really high pitched like really high pitched bird voice, and of course like Kana is like, you can't be fucking serious, like I'm an actor, and then fucking fitness instructor is like, by the way, I bring in 100 million yen a year, like off of like my YouTube ad revenue,
your Patreon shit, or
inane
so like gimmick,
So she instantly is on board after he says that, right? It's so the whole sequence is quite funny because he gets them to come onto his channel, and the video they do is, we're gonna do this exercise choreography for a full hour straight. And Ruby, who is, still pure of heart, does not want to lie to the public and just cut it so that it looks like that they were doing it for an hour. And she actually is determined for her and Kanda to do this for an hour, even though they, are not. I mean, it's very hard to exercise straight for an hour on camera, right?
Yeah.
So,
did they do another 90-minute episode for this?
No, although somebody did put it. So there was an official video of somebody doing it for an hour that they put up for real. There is a very long, well animated sequence of them doing it for a couple minutes, though.
Yeah, I mean, when you say like Kaguya style humor, right? This almost feels like it's meant to be Oshinoko's equivalent of like the Fujiwara dance in the first season of Kaguya-sama. Right?
That's what I was hearing about this episode. There's something in this episode that's designed to go viral.
Yeah. And it's a funny sequence, a funny scene, and it's also like, again, it feels like, this is the writer of Kaguya-sama, right? And
and here's the thing, right? It's like Ruby is not necessarily like, look, let's be real, right? She simply does not get as much screen time as Aquamarine, but like, I do actually think there's somewhat of an interesting dynamic there, right? Of like, despite her and Kana like ostensibly being the same ages, like Kana is a cynic, right? She has seen the worst of the entertainment industry, having done this since she was a child, and like contrasting that cynicism with Ruby's like, for now it is portrayed as like admirable optimism, and I am curious like if this is the type of show that will eventually like force her to confront like the harsher realities of like this path that she is going down.
I think they would if they ever give her more screen time. We'll see.
Yeah, if she gets screen time, which is again maybe one of the problems.
Yeah, I just think it's weird though, because I enjoyed that scene, like it was funny, but I feel like it just did not fit the rest of the show. And maybe this is going to what Aqua said on the last episode, where this show can just be all over the place, especially when we shift tone to episode 6, right? Like,
right. So here's the thing, right? Like that style of Kaguya style humor makes sense in Kaguya, where like, Kaguya at its absolute most dramatic was like what, the last episode of season 1, like the end of season 3,
or any of the season finale episodes is like the moment they get dramatic for like half an episode.
But even then, like that drama is like basic like school shit, right? Like it's confessing to my crush, or oh no, my crush has an overbearing parent. It's like it's small time shit, right? And so, the style of humor in Kaguya-sama plays off that well. I think where maybe Oshi-no-ko runs into an issue is like you have something like that Kaguya style humor in episode 5, and then you veer into episode 6, which really just goes like all in on maybe the like it goes all in like maybe the darkest possible direction you could take a show about the entertainment industry.
Yeah. So episode 6,
somebody's gotta sleep their way to the top.
Well, no, but it's a different direction with it. That would be another way you could go if you wanted to make a dark episode, but I have a feeling that will pop up at some point. Mm-hmm. But episode 6 turns the focus back over to Aqua's reality show, and as the episodes go on, some of the people end up becoming the popular ones, and others are not. And one of the girls who is not popular, we start to see some of her background and pressure from her agency and her agent, and to be successful and get on and get recognized on the show so that she can get other parts or whatever. And she's not getting any screen time because she's just kind of boring, right? So and
they do a good job of like showing that this is a person who has put in the work.
Yes.
Right. Like this is not a case of like, oh, she's just like a middling actress, or she's not putting in the work and that's why she's not standing out. Like they specifically show that like, oh, she was inspired to become an actress since she was a kid. She attended classes. She took mentorships that she that she practices every day. Like they very much want you to understand that this girl is a hard worker.
Right.
And that it gets confronted immediately by the reality that being a hard worker is simply alone is not good enough to succeed in the entertainment industry.
Yeah. And this eventually kind of leads into the main, I think, theme of the episode, which is, the effect of, things people are saying on social media, right? So
yeah,
she kind of goes from just being invisible as she's, scrolling through Twitter of people's reactions and trying to see what people are saying about her to, I guess the big inciting incident here is she's determined to stand out on the show somehow, and the two most popular people, this guy and girl, are like, things are heating up between their relationship, and she decides, I'm going to try to go break them up or something. And there's this very
cause drama,
to cause some drama and get noticed, and maybe people will hate me or whatever, but they'll notice me, right? Like that they'll start. The people will be talking about me.
Is this episode about becoming the main character of Twitter for a day? Like,
no such thing as bad publicity.
Yeah, well, essentially, yes, kind of.
It's not.
But of course, it is taking the perspective of Japanese fandom and how Japanese fandom interacts with the Japanese entertainment industry. Mm-hmm. And what I'm saying by that is, if anyone has ever read an article about idol culture in Japan, you know what I'm getting at here. And so it kind of basically, like, Akane that's the name of the hardworking actress who is kind of fading into the background.
Okay, another. This is why I'm getting these names confused, because we were just talking about another Akane earlier. But yes,
Akane, it basically tries to, like, be a wedge against another actress named Yuki. Yuki is sort of she is the kind of the standout star of the show. Right, we kind of find out. We have scenes with her in Aquamarine that kind of show that, like, she is just a natural, like. She just has a knack for being charismatic, right? She's just inherently good at dealing with people. Like, she even, like, throws Aqua, like, for a loop with, like, how good her, like, acting is, like, how naturalistic her acting is.
Mm-hmm.
And, Yuki doesn't necessarily mean it with antagonism, but, like, she acknowledges what Akane is trying to do and is like, I'm working just as hard as you in this industry. Like, I don't know what your tragic backstory is, but I'm not just going to roll over for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this all kind of culminates in Akane having a, like, real heated breakdown during the filming of the show. Like, not just, like, a pretend,
scripted,
like, but, like, scripted, but, like straight up, like, you fucking bitch, straight up, and, swings her hand out at Yuki. Maybe not intentionally so, but ends up, like, swiping her cheek.
Kind of slapping her in the face and scratching her face.
Scratching her face, right? And important, of course, is that these are all, attractive, young actors, with modeling careers and such, right? And so this, of course, becomes a scandal. But what's important about this scandal, right, is that, and here's the thing I'm very curious about with Yuki. Does Yuki actually forgive Akane, or is this also just another play? But like, Yuki and Akane make up pretty quickly. Like, they kind of have that, like, they step away from the cameras, and
I feel like that was.
They do explicitly say that wasn't filmed, so it's not like Yuki was necessarily, like, playing up for the camera, but.
The important part, because I feel like that was probably genuine. The important part is the online reaction, right?
Right. So once the internet gets a hold of this, though, like, it instantly turns to death threats, harassment, going after Akane's family, right? You're seeing messages online of, like, if this is how Akane turned out, what kind of fucking, stank whore must her mother be, like, stuff like that, like, adding, Akane in the DM saying, do you want to apologize? You should fucking kill yourself.
Yeah,
like, that's the
you would
only
expect.
way.
There was that, on actual Terrace House a few years ago, there was that.
Yeah, somebody committed suicide on Terrace House, for real.
Yeah.
Yes, it was a young lady wrestler.
When was that, when did Oshinoko start? Is that
I think, like,
it's some, like,
I think the government.
So Oshinoko started, like, right before that happened.
Holy shit! So it's not even like a started.
That'd be like almost a. I don't know.
That's like a rip from the headlines.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a weekly or monthly, but that's basically ripped from the headlines almost. Like,
yeah,
that's
that. Yeah, but that's kind of what they're. going for, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, right. It's like there's a lot of intense cyberbullying, right? Just like, and of course, there's an aspect of like they get into this with multiple characters. Kana says this. The YouTuber on the show says this, right? Like, the tragic reality of like what Akane does here is like, and this is not to victim blame her. Let me be clear, but her actions are like she does all of the worst possible things you can do when you become the main character of Twitter. Like, she tries to tweet through it. She tries to apologize. She admits to her wrongdoing. And like, you have multiple characters. She looks up her own name on like anonymous message boards. She goes to 2chan.
No,
like, she literally to look herself up. You know?
Boy.
And it's like multiple characters in this episode are like, you should really only do that.
Right.
Like, if
don't read the comments.
No, yeah, don't read the comments, right? And especially if you're a sensitive person, right? Like, if you can't take, and I'm not saying you should be good at taking this type of harassment, but like, if you know that you are especially sensitive to it,
yeah,
you got to get offline. You know?
Yeah,
on the other hand, I understand the sort of horrible fascination.
Like, of course,
yeah,
right?
it's not that it's not her. It's not her fault, but it's also reality, right? Like, it's
right.
if you're going to do that, that's what you're going to run into. And
yeah,
and go ahead, G. You go on.
No, I mean, it's just like, and so the rest of the episode just focuses on her like really, really grim downward spiral. You know, like,
and you see it happening kind of gradually over time. As like, and there's people who are like concerned for her, but she's like, oh yeah, I'm fine. Or whatever, but you know,
like, I mean, that's the important thing to remember, right? Is like, this is all happening on the internet. In real life, well, so, you know, there's a moment where like, the classic anime trope of she's in the bathroom stall and then overhears a couple of girls at her school like talking shit about her. But like, I think this show makes a very important distinction that the worst of the harassment is happening online. Her coworkers are not abusing her. The show has not like, it has not like kicked her off or anything, right? I mean, they're not defending her. They're certainly not standing by her, but they have not like turned on her, right? She is. I mean, there is a scene towards the end where her coworker or co-actors are like broadly still supportive, right? Because Yuki forgave her, right? Like the people who were actually there when it happened understand it was a heated moment, right? That it was an unintentional like lashing out, not like a malicious action, but the internet does not, the internet hate machine does not care for that, right? It sees a target that society says is okay to bully and like descends upon it like, a cloud of locusts.
Yeah. And, this comes to the conclusion that they're kind of hinting at the whole episode where she basically attempts to end her life, right? And, Aqua swoops in at the last second to save her, I guess. Which kind of leads to my next part of this discussion, where it's like, I appreciate what this episode was trying to do and the message. I'm very much on board with. As far as
I think,
and
I think it is a pretty unapologetic portrayal of like cyberbullying, like for sure, like, and that is deeply sympathetic to its victim.
I think some of the depiction of it is very well done, and some of it I think is a little too ham-fisted on the nose.
I mean, for fuck's sake, like the girl is literally 1 foot off the railing when Aquamarine comes in for the save, right?
Yeah.
It's like some
I think the more internal parts, when it's like her reading stuff online and how they depict that and everything, was good.
Yeah.
But like everything else is very melodramatic. There's a lot of big speeches again. I'm so sick of the speeches in this show.
No,
again,
because the problem is like a lot of these speeches are falling into the trap of like, to you, layman viewer who may not understand, allow I, the experienced YouTuber, to explain cyberbullying. And it's
I guess
very...
The question with the speeches, I guess, is, do you feel that the characters are speaking to you, or is it the author speaking
it's
to
the author
the
speaking to you, yes.
Right, that's not good.
And I think that happens a lot in the show when I'm talking about, like, it's the Nisio Eisen comparison. Like, it feels like that to me, where it is like just the author, like you said, Zig, speaking directly to the audience, and it's just people giving long monologues rather than, like I said in the first time we talked about the show, like, if you didn't tell me this was a manga, I would think it was a novel. like the adaptation because there's
that
so much talking.
It has that kind of like very over wordy kind of like self-pontification, I'm assuming.
Right.
Yeah, and it kind of, I don't know, for me it kind of dilutes a little bit what they're trying to say, because it's like, okay, yeah, you guys are kind of just, you know, it's like they're I don't know, rather it's the old show don't tell, right? Like rather than you know, they're making some effort to show us the effects of it, but it's also a lot of them, some people getting up on their, you know, their soapbox and preaching about it, right? So
yeah.
Sorry,
Ira, you were going to say something.
Like that's sort of the reason I like never liked Nishio-sen stuff. Is like it's all very pleased with itself all the time, right?
Yeah, and again, I'm not saying it's at that level, because they are still talking about like real human things, whereas Nishio-sen is just like like whatever philosophical
how clever my wordplay is.
Concept and wordplay that he thought of that day.
I am tortured about which of these girls I should bang.
Yeah, this is still like talking about real things, right? But and then when we get to that ending, and G, I think you were starting to hint at it. So Aqua does kind of swoop it and save her at the last second before she jumps. Now I'm not saying, yeah.
Well,
so
you go first.
Yeah, I'm not saying that I wish the show went through with it per se.
No, that would have been a little too.
Although I don't know if that would be out of the scope for the show, to be honest, with considering how it started.
Yeah.
But I don't know. That starts to feed back into our problems with Aqua being the perfect. I've figured
right. I
mean,
out. The fucker is. I mean, the fucker started to turn into fucking light if he had gone into the entertainment industry instead of gotten the Death Note. You know, like there's there's that element of like smug super anime super genius that is happening here. That like,
I mean, I don't know the context, but I will say inherently the last minute suicide save is kind of a shitty trope, because that's not how it works in real life.
No, and
also,
so the thing,
it sort of assumes that, like, by stopping the moment of madness, you have stopped the root of the problem.
Right, and
you
like,
know,
I don't think the show's gonna go that far. I think obviously there's a road ahead here, but
and we don't, to be clear, we don't see immediately what happens after that. We only see like the moment, and that's where the episode ends.
Right. I'm not necessarily saying that. I'm not necessarily saying that this particular example of that contains all of those parts, but I'm saying the trope has sort of become so played out and like the trope is inherently associated with the bad kind of melodrama.
Right. So I do want to say, just so you know, anyone who's listening understands that we're not. I mean, like that. We do understand like what the show is doing here. Like it does technically cover its tracks by having like it shows scenes of her coworkers texting her in their like group chat, like line message board or whatever, right? Be like, hey, are you okay? Like, and hey, you haven't responded to our last text in a little bit. Is everything cool? And all that stuff, right? So it's like technically there is an understanding that like her coworkers know that she is not well. So it's not like Aquamarine just like swoops in out of nowhere. But it is a little bothersome. It's like, okay, so it's like you did do the work to establish that they know that like she's likely in a really bad place. But then you have to like still explain, how did Aquamarine know that this was the night she was going to be feeling her most suicidal?
That spot.
And know which spot, and know to get there in time. Like,
it's
and that's where it like starts to fall apart, because you talk about the show that's been so like pretty grounded in and unapologetic about its portrayal of like the entertainment industry, and then you still kind of have this like anime melodramatic shit happening.
Yeah, I mean, again, I always keep going back to the first episode. Like they didn't pull their punches on the first episode, and again, they could have found another way around this. I'm not saying that they should have went through with it, but like it's just like they found they decided to just use that opportunity to feed into the Aqua as a super genius trope, right? And that's the part that's driving us crazy with this show,
right? Like, if anything, like the only reason why it might end up working for me, right, is like like for as much as kind of a prick as Aquamarine has become, now having lived, I don't know, 1.5 lives at this point, I do think that like an element of this is probably motivated by like, you know, in his past life, right? Like the thing that kind of, or the thing that kind of drives both of the lives he lives, right, is his failure to save the lives of like people close to him, right? Like he could not save the sick girl as a doctor, and there was nothing he could do for I as her child. And so I can, I don't. It's like that thing of like, okay, so I can kind of see that it's probably like it's not that Aquamarine is just like this like Machiavellian manipulator. He is probably somewhat motivated by his like humanitarian desire to help people, but like, I don't know. It's not as slickly executed as that first episode, and I think that's kind of just true in general for this show.
Yeah, it still feels like an anime, if that makes sense. Like these are the things that would happen. These are the things that would happen in an anime, right?
It still feels like an anime. I
don't know. You know what? I started. I actually was thinking about comparing this to the latest episode of Heavenly Delusion, which I know it's very different circumstances, but just as far as like depicting human tragedy, right? Like, I don't know, the way that show handled it and kind of like accepted it and dealt with it, I feel like was not felt so much more like natural and real, and like I felt so much more emotionally connected to that character that I had never seen before prior to like,
and also because the situation is so much more fantastical. And,
right, yes. Whereas in this one, it felt like a story. While the things that were happening were real, and again, I think I'm on board with addressing those issues, it still felt like this is a story someone is telling me, if that makes sense. Like I wasn't as connected to it, right? Like it felt that's kind of what I mean when I'm saying it felt like an anime,
was not as suspended,
because it was still fitting into like the anime formulas of how this story is being told, right? And I don't know, it's hard to like explain that in words, but I think if you watch it, it makes sense. But
I mean, if you
watch a lot of anime, it makes sense.
The thing I would say is that I think, and this isn't just true for anime, it's true for like media in general, is that a lot of that work is done before the actual quote unquote big issue comes up, right? If you've built your characters out as 3-dimensional characters who have the emotional depth on their own to kind of like react realistically to the situation, I think you've done a lot of the work you need to help the audience suspend their disbelief, right?
Yeah, or I guess even how your show normally depicts things, and then, again, this all ties back to the everything being told in long monologues and everything. But I don't want to keep going in loops on it. It just when I was seeing everybody buzzing about this episode, and I felt like I was not in agreement with everyone else on my opinion on this episode. Even if it wasn't bad per se, it was like I feel like there were still a lot of holes in in it.
It's very strongly directed, which I guess you could is also true of the show as a whole. I will say that, right? Like it is. The stuff hits, even if like, yes, once I stepped away from it, I was like, actually, I don't know if this holds up that well. But
the end result
in the moment, So, Oshi no Ko still, not a.
At least they're shaking things up still, because I was kind of worried. Again, it's just being worried about this show kind of settling into its, and here's this type of show and how this gets made type of thing. They're still taking big swings here, so I'll give them that much. All right.
Well, talking about another show that makes some big swings.
Yeah, let's conclude with
swings
Vinland
of an
Saga.
Axe. That is.
Well, you made it back in time.
Yeah.
What's been going on
in Norway, or no, in England? So, to recap the situation, basically, King Canute is on his way to seize Ketil's farm. Meanwhile, while Kettle is away, Gardar, a runaway slave, appeared to claim his wife, Arnhide, who was also a slave at that farm, and he killed a lot of people and was killed in turn, and our heroes, Thorfinn and Einar and Arnhide, are all locked up because they tried to escape or tried to assist some way to escape. So,
and
the worst possible situation for Kettle to come back to while fleeing the worst possible situation.
Yeah, and that sort of becomes the core of the first of these two episodes, which is titled The First Method. And this sort of gets into Thorfinn's continued struggle with, like, what does pacifism mean, right? Because everybody tells Thorfinn, you did the right thing throwing hands with Snake, the hired guard mercenary for Kettle's farm, because you were trying to save people from, bondage, right? But Thorfinn struggles with this because everybody says, no, you did it for a righteous cause. Like, you were trying to save those people. Like, it was a good thing you went back on your pacifism and fought that guy. And Thorfinn is deeply troubled by this because he asks the question, isn't this what everybody tells themselves when they commit violence? That, well, those guys over there, they're violent and crazy, but me, I'm doing it for the right reasons. And it is sort of seen in every character in this arc. Canute is convinced that violently seizing Kettle's farm will give him the resources he needs to wage his war on England, and that his war in England will go smoother if he has the resources he has taken from Kettle. Thus, in the long term, there will be less violence as a result. Kettle also resorts to violence as his first means of problem solving when he returns to his farm to find out that Arnhide attempted to escape. And this is sort of the moment that the show has been building up to, with Kettle being portrayed as the, like, sort of milquetoast but broadly benevolent slave master by the standards of this time period. He is willing to free his slaves, if they work for him enough and such, right? And he is broadly portrayed as someone who does not like to inflict terrible amounts of violence on his slaves. And it's sort of that very, very grim reminder that personality is manicured by, in essence, the privilege he enjoyed as someone in a position of power. And what we see with Kettle this week is, once that power has been removed, once he is placed in the worst possible situation on the worst day of his life, what is the true, face of his character? And the true face of Kettle is, upon finding out that his favorite sex slave attempted to run away, is to savagely beat her half to death with a stick. That is what a benevolent slave master looks like in medieval Europe.
It's easy to be benevolent when you have absolute and complete control over everything.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes.
It's easy not to resort to violence when there's nothing that you need or want.
Yeah,
exactly, and that is very much what this episode is about. When it titled "The First Method," right, is that it is easy to be kind and good when things are going well, but who are you on your worst day? And that's what we find out about Kettle, and that all sort of leads into the second of these two episodes, the Battle of Kettle's Farm, where Canute's men have boarded the beaches of Kettle's Farm. He has brought with him 100 trained, Danish Viking soldiers, his King's Guard, the Joms Vikings, the best of the best, right? And, they are up against Kettle's farm of, 300, tenant farm, farm hands and peasants and freed slaves. And, look, if you were like, boy, there sure doesn't seem like there's a lot of Viking violence in Vinland Saga these days. This episode is a reminder that, for a certain period of time, being able to command dudes to wear armor and stand in a line and not break under pressure is enough to have one of the strongest armies of this time period.
Right.
Like it's 3-1, and it's not even close, right? Like Canute's men do not break under pressure; they stay in formation. You know, they have armor. They got chainmail, man.
They don't have pots on their heads.
There's literally a dude in fucking Kettle's side of the battle wearing a bucket on his head, man. It's, you know,
use what you got.
Yeah, it is, you know, just that reminder that this is what a professional army looks like in the medieval period.
Right.
But this deeply troubles Thorfinn because over the course of these 2 episodes, Thorfinn essentially earns his freedom. Leif brokered a deal with Kettle before everything had gone bad to free Thorfinn and allow Leif to take Thorfinn with him. And I guess technically true to his word, Kettle does technically still uphold the deal, right? Allows Thorfinn to leave with Leif.
Mm-hmm.
And Leif is like, dude, we got to get out of here. This is about to go super fucking bad. And Thorfinn looks at the situation, and again, he is forced to ask himself, hundreds of people are going to be killed here. There is going to be an untold amount of suffering. What can a pacifist hope to do in a situation like this? Is there anything he can hope to do to, if not stop it from happening, then at least mitigate some of the harm? And is the dreadful realization you come to that, oh, the only way to stop this degree of violence is with an equal degree of violence and power? And if that is so, then why were any of us put on this earth?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And do we
I know it's space where we'll leave off, or like the battle's happening, and all that. And of course, because of stuff that happened in season 1, like this is all to facilitate Canute and Thorfinn meeting once again.
Yes.
On with the dynamic completely flipped, right?
Under the best of circumstances.
Yeah, it's. I can't. I'm sorry, guys. This show is just so fucking good. Like, I can't. Vinland Saga. This is what this has all been building up to, man. I say it every week. Like this, these storylines are what it's all been. It's all been building towards, and I'm so happy they are executing on it as well as they are. I just a show that is willing to like ask these questions and like not give our heroes easy outs, right? Like,
right.
Thorfinn
it's not
truly.
It's not like you find some magic solution that makes everything better, right? Like that saves everybody, right?
Yeah, like these people are already killing each other. You know, the battle has already started. You know, and like. We kind of didn't get into it in the previous podcast, but like this battle was sort of preluded by a previous conflict where when Snake and Thorfinn were fighting, you know, once again, you could almost ask, why do these 2 guys have to fight? They used to be friends. And Snake is like, Garter, the escaped slave, killed my men. And like, as far as Snake is concerned, that is an entirely valid reason to escalate the violence. And in this era, he's not entirely wrong. Like, an escaped slave has killed 5 of his men. People he considered like comrades in arms.
It's like, is that slave's life worth more than the lives of my men? Or, you know, like...
And it's like once... And it's like that reality that once blood has been spilled, it is... especially with the morality and societal norms of medieval Europe, it's basically almost impossible to put that sword back in the sheath. And that was just a skirmish, right? That was like a fight between like a slave and like 5 guys, you know, on a farm. Now we're talking a battle, you know, involving hundreds of people, right? And it's like, what could you possibly hope to do, you know? And that is the question that Thorfinn is going to struggle with for probably the rest of this season.
I guess we'll find out in the next... So they just leave you hanging there at the end, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
For good.
So G, as the manga reader on this, do you have an idea where they're going? Since there's only a couple episodes left, do you have an idea where they're going to stop?
Yeah, I think we are going to finish up the Farmland Saga arc here, and you know, that'll be a damn good place to end the Vinland Saga anime.
Okay,
not bad, huh?
It's not that bad. It's just, you know, This is Vinland Saga at its best, at its absolute peak. This is the golden age era. If you talk about the golden age arc of Berserk, right? This is it for Vinland Saga. This is as good as it gets.
Yeah.
And
all right.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a real good show. Watch it if you're willing to watch all of season 1 also.
Yeah, that's a problem. You got to watch season 1 first.
Yeah, that continues to be my hurdle on this, but
the other issue is there seem to be a lot of good shows this season, huh?
It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Few. All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for this episode then. So let's do our housekeeping. You can check us out at theglorioblog.com. You can follow us on Twitter still at the Glorio Blog or at Glorio Blog. I think it's just at Glorio Blog. And then co-host at Glorio.
No, it's at the Glorio Blog on Twitter.
Okay, it is the. Okay. You think I would remember after like 12 years now, right?
I mean, look, nobody's going to be on that thing in a year anyway, so
yeah. I have significantly reduced my Twitter time in the past 3 or 4 months, I would guess. But yes, anyway.
Weird, huh?
Yep, and for the podcast, you can subscribe on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Amazon Music, Podbean, Stitcher, and of course YouTube. You can like, comment, subscribe, ring that notification bell. Leave those comments telling us about any of the shows we're missing, or why that episode of Oshi no Ko was actually good and we're wrong. All those good things. Tell your friends, tell your enemies, and we'll catch everybody next time.
Shit, I didn't even get a chance to talk about my Birdie Wing Witch from Mercury crossover. Spoilers. God damn it.